Okay, Podcast Nation, here we are back with another empathy chat. What are we calling this, Seth? The Empathy Hour, even though this is going to probably be 25 minutes. We have an incredible guest who I actually think exudes empathy, and we'll go into that in a minute. Christina Tosi is an incredible creative superstar and entrepreneur. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and we will do what we're doing on this show, which is taste the new empathy wines, talk about empathy in general, and shoot the shit in general over that. So Christina, how have you been?
Hi, Gary. I've been all right. You know, I mean, if you ask me, because you know me, I'm like a stubborn optimist at all costs. I've been really well, despite everything that's going on, because I think I know this about me, and I know people like you are similar, where when you decide that that is your mindset, that's how you see everything. The harder the reality, the more you lean into the sort of like bold optimism.
Yeah, that's right. I totally agree with you. The darker it gets, the more practical optimistic I get.
100%. So it always feels weird and guilty to be like, I'm doing really well, but it's because when I see that, like, you know, that the scales are tilting in a negative direction, that's when I really lean into like, we need more goodness. We need more of a reminder that there is this, that there is to every force, there is an opposing force. And I think that's people like us need to show up, you know, these are,
I mean, I tell people, like, there were optimistic people during World War II and during the Black Plague and during, you know, like that. I couldn't agree with you more. This concept that you're not allowed to counter negativity with bright positivity is actually remarkably misunderstood.
Yeah, it's also easier for me because I'm a pastry chef by trade, right? Like that's what I do for a living. That's what we do at Milk Bar. I tell the team, you know, like our job,
your job is to help people escape. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and showing up, whether it's making a bad day good or an amazing day, you know, marking a moment in the most amazing day in someone's life. And that, I suppose that's probably why I also chose the profession for a living, because there's something about baked goods that do that without having to have the words. Because a lot of times we don't ever feel like we have the right words, or we feel guilty when we're saying the words, or I mean, that's part of empathy too, right? Like knowing 100%. How to meet people where they are. And the easiest way to do it in my mind is like, show up with a platter of cookies with the cake, send it, you know, like those baked goods do the work and say the things that you can't always figure out how to say or convey.
Yeah, donuts and croissants and muffins have definitely said things to me that have
those
made me much happier. Oh my God, I love those things. Actually, Christina, why don't we take 2 minutes? Tell everybody a little bit about who you are for the people that don't know, reading the headline of this podcast.
So optimist, lifelong optimist. No, pastry chef. I started Milk Bar, which is this sort of quirky American style bakery. We ship treats nationwide. We have these wonderful bakeries from East Coast to West Coast, and we're now in the aisles of the grocery store. And I'd say what we do, I call it a quirky American style bakery because we take riffs on your classics. I would never want to compete with your croissant or your donut, right? But I want to make an apple cider donut cake that brings the spirit of what that donut does, your classic first memory of a donut, and sort of twist it and turn it on its head in a way that ideally also like breathes life and possibility and reminds you of who you are without challenging these really sort of like spirited spiritual moments, and reminds you that every single day and moment and opportunity is like to bring a little bit more of you into it, these really connective, dynamic, sticky ways.
How did that happen? Who inspired you in baking life?
I learned to bake tactically from the matriarchs in my family, mom, grandmas, aunts. I saw what baked goods did in the world.
They were our conduit.
Yeah. They were our conduit out of the house into the community to like an old folks home, someone that was sick, what have you. And then I guess from like an actual like mentor standpoint, probably the person that inspired me to turn things on their head was like 10-year-old me, when you're making like crazy concoctions in the kitchen, you're like, I think this tastes good. And then the person that probably validated it most was Wiley Dufresne, who had at the time a restaurant, WD50, on the Lower East Side, because that's what he was doing with savory food. And then David Chang kind of like gave me the push off the ledge from Momofuku, where I was helping him run operations in the restaurant. And it's sort of like, I think you're onto something. Like he was all about loud food, attitude, flavors, breaking rules through food on the savory side, and he really sort of gave me my first start. So it's a mishmash of people, but you know, it's a long and winding road. Life is, right? It's all connected, and none of it's ever linear.
Speaking of my connected but not linear journey, wine was such a big part of this. Where does wine sit in your ecosystem? Have you drank wine? Are you into wine? Do you like wine? Ebbs and flows? Are you?
Well, first of all, I'm enjoying the excuse to have a glass of this freaking delicious Empathy rosé with you and call it work. That's always a joy. You know,
always a joy. Yes.
My Tosi is Northern Italian. And so my family's all from the Piedmont region of Italy. And so I was raised on this sounds
Nebbiolo.
Nebbiolo. Barolo is definitely the wine of choice in my household as such, though obviously Nebbiolos, Barbarescos, those for me, those are my like if the croissant and the donut are for you, a great bottle of red wine from the Piedmont region that's touting. For me, it's like capital B Barolo is always my like favorite place to go, and that's my comfort blanket. But I've had the fortune, because of my spouse, to visit you know, all different parts of the world and to visit wineries, and I have it's quite interesting when you are like deep enough into your whatever it is that you do for a living with like great passion. You start to connect into other people who are doing absolutely different things, and to go like, holy smokes, I totally relate to that. Jean-Louis Chab was like my favorite winery visit, because watching him blend wines and watching how, you know, the grapes that grow on this side of the Hermitage versus that side of the Hermitage, two totally different things. And I was like, oh my gosh, you could be a pastry chef. I would like to think I could be a winemaker that could
100%.
Pull those dollars in a bottle of wine. But that for me is what I go to quickly when I think of wine in my life. What do you got?
Well, what I was going to say was that really resonated for me, because I think growing, you know, when I was 14 is when I started my education on wine. Like, you know, Jean-Louis Chab hit my radar literally when I was 15 years old, reading Robert Parker's Wine Advocate. That's probably the first time I saw that name. And so going through that journey of being 15, let's say, to 30, where obviously the first 5-6 years of that, I didn't really drink wine, and then starting the journey of 21 to 30, and then 21 to 23 was very different than 23 to 30, because 21 to 23 was very concerning, because everything just tasted like red wine and white wine, right? I was going to be this big wine guy, and I was like, crap, I don't know what they are saying. Like when it has, what's blackberry? I don't understand. Like, I don't taste chocolate. This is just red wine. This doesn't taste like, you know, like chocolate ice cream. And then, right. And then like cat pee in New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc really scared me. I was like, wait, do I have to drink cat pee? You know, but you know, you go through that journey, and then really starting to get to really understand it. And then to your point, that decade of traveling around the wine world and watching people, and then the collectors, and it just really kind of being in that place of 30, 35 years old, and just knowing an ungodly amount and being deeply passionate about it has really serviced me well in the rest of my career, whether it's the details of how to do proper marketing, or NFT land now, or looking at artists talk about their NFTs, collectibles, like all this tchotchke stuff back here. It's all been connected. So what do you drink rosé, or is that not something you drink?
I drink rosé. I find, you know,
don't appease me here. I'm just curious.
No. I find that the one thing that's consistent for me is having a like wonderful glass of red wine that like soothes the soul after a long day. I find my drinking
Are you a one glass of red wine a day gal?
I am. I'm not like I won't go unless I'm dining out and it's a real occasion. It's like one glass. I could never eat just one donut or one croissant. That's not my personality, but there's something really soothing about looking forward to a glass of really great red wine at night. and drinking it slowly and really savoring it. It's quite hilarious because it's not how I would eat anything else.
And do you kind of drink the same bottle for like 3 days and then move on? Is that kind of how it works, given that you do one glass?
My counterpart will very happily help
drink the other 4 glasses.
Yeah, so exactly.
So you're set.
So it's a new bottle.
You start together and then it's finished off.
It's
I love that.
But I find like this rosé is at its perfect time because we're like on the brink of spring, and it's reminding me, like, just like you see things start to come out of the ground or bud on the branch, you're like, oh heck yeah, it's almost you know what I mean? Like, it's almost time for the moment we're craving other types of wine, different temperatures and so on, and drinking occasions. Like for me, that glass of red wine is very spiritual for me alone, but I think of all of the other libations, like I mark them in how I live my life at different times of year based on what I'm craving or what I'm eating with or the kind of company I'm enjoying.
What do you like, just personally? You know, again, I'm worried on this show, people try to make me feel good. I didn't make this wine. We have an incredible winemaker. So if you hate it, I'm equally just as happy.
Yes.
What stands out for you in the rosé? Like what do you like the crispness, the flavor profile? What stands out?
What I like about it is it's not too dry and it's not too sweet. And so there's something about it that's rosé like, but it's also, I like a really good Albarino. Like that's probably my summertime thing that I love to drink in the backyard. And there's something about it that starts to sort of make me go mentally based on its flavors in that direction. But what I like about it is it's not too intense in one direction or another. Yeah, which I really appreciate.
It's funny, I had it the other day, and I am such a big white wine fan.
Are you really?
Massive. I think white wine is incredibly underrated because people think you graduate to reds. Yet at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, Wiley, did you know Wiley when he was dating Liz Willette?
No. I started working for him just after that.
Got it. So like, you know, I really grew up in the wine business and like was in Jersey, but the whole New York wine scene. And when I would come here and nerd out with the Soms or people in the wine business, like Liz, Wiley's former girlfriend, or Wiley, you know, like when that was, I remember when WD50 opened, like I was there like week 1. You know, I really was taken aback in my youth, in my early 20s, mid 20s, that the most serious wine sommeliers were drinking white wine at night. So like Spotted Pig in its heyday in the 2000s, when that whole restaurant scene and sommeliers were hanging out there at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, you know, I didn't do that often because I was just kind of always working retail, but a couple of times I found myself there, the sommeliers were drinking Riesling. And it really struck me early on. And I got very formed by the wine leaders of the New York wine scene back then. And really when you love, and this will make sense to you, when you love something deeply, you're 360 about it. You're not where everyone else is. And so, yeah, I'm a huge white wine fan, and the rosé on Empathy always tries to strive to over deliver for high acid white wine drinkers. And that's why I think you've
so interesting. It's, if that's the intention for me, it's like spot on. Because I'm gonna open the rosé because I'm curious. I like to go to the thing that I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be drawn to this as much. And then that for me is always where I go first because that's where I'm the most curious. That's really interesting.
Let's talk about empathy before we get out of here. As a kid growing up, how did that word, now that you understand that word, play? And then not more importantly, but equally important because there's so many entrepreneurs, how do you think about empathy as a leader of your businesses?
As a kid, my mom always raised us to do the thing that other people weren't doing, which is to say, if there was like a kid at like recess that didn't have anyone to talk to, it was like, you go to that person, right? Like you show up for the people that don't seem like they have someone that's showing up for them in the way that you might. And that had always been the way that we were raised. She also, hilariously enough, she's an accountant. She is the most passionate accountant you've ever met. I know her clients that she's had her entire profession, I know them because she's the accountant that's like, when I show up with your taxes, I'm also going to show up with like a bag of chocolate chip cookies. Or when it's your X or Y or Z, or when you're having a hard time in this place or that place, we would go over to her clients' homes and like bring our toys or our baby dolls or our puzzles or what have you, because she was just like, when you are going to show up for someone, you show up for them. You meet them in their moment and in their place. And when I think about it from building a business standpoint, obviously got to choose a great thing that we are showing up in the world through baked goods. That does so much of that natural empathetic work. But also as a leader, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, right? Like, you can never underestimate the power of not making assumptions and really asking someone, how you doing? How you feeling? Following up with them on something that they shared with you, digging into what is below the surface, and also like just asking yourself, like, do I feel like I'm getting all of this person? Do they seem distracted? Do they seem super happy? What is that about? You know, and trying to understand like what is below the surface of someone, and then showing up for them there. Because oftentimes, at least when you're the boss, right? People are showing up for you and they're following your lead and they're taking your lead. You both want them to be seen, and you want them to also understand by your empathetic leadership how to show up for their team and leverage people's superpowers to the utmost extent. One, because it's going to make them feel great, and two, because it's going to serve your business best.
What was the toughest transition from going from like a senior executive in someone else's company to being the last line of defense and being the queen bee in your own?
Such a great question.
Did you anticipate the fact that you'd have to always be on? Like, actually,
no, that for me was that was where I was going to go. But I was like, well, no, actually, because I live by the, like, how you do everything is how you do anything. And so when I was working for someone else, I was already doing that. They would be like,
already acting as if it was, got it. You were,
I think for me,
it's less about going home. It's more about the thing that I always warn my friends. And when I say warn, I just really want them to be prepared, is even if you're the number 2 or the number 3 at a company, the fact that on Saturday evening, you have to be mentally prepared that there's a leak in the building. There's a level of never being off, kind of similar to being a parent. Like, watching 86-year-olds worry. Like, some of my favorite conversations that I stumble on, I had this combo with this person on a plane 6 months ago. She was so worried about her 67-year-old son as if he was 4. And I remember walking away from that thinking, this is what I've always thought about business. It's like, once a parent, always a parent. When there's a great Russian saying that says, little kids don't let you sleep, big kids don't let you live. And it really just translates. They're like, you're always a parent, right? You're always a parent. And that's how I think what happens when you start your own business. You don't actually get to breathe. And when you're the number 6 or the number 13, when you go on vacation, you are checked out. When I'm on vacation, I'm anxious that I'm about to get a phone call about to fuck up my vacation.
Yeah. My husband's like, why are we even at the beach? You don't even want to be here. Like, your brain is back.
By the way, to that point, that's why I've really fallen in love with the last 2 weeks of August, Thanksgiving week, Christmas week, because the collective world kind of looks at each other and says, we're checked out.
Yeah. New Year's Day that week, best week. In a bakery business, best. No one's trying to buy dessert that week. No one's trying to hit you up. Everyone's done with dessert for a week, and you're just like, okay, I can breathe.
Literally from Christmas to like January 7th, I am at my most relaxed. 100%. Those 2 weeks. Talk to me before we get out of here on what you're excited about. Just a little 5 minutes of Christina life. Like what are you most excited about in your businesses or in popular culture? Anything on your
that's
fun
good.
line? Yeah.
I mean, my thing right now, so I just finished writing this book. It's out in the world. It's called Dessert Can Save the World. And it is, I guess technically from a book publisher standpoint, it's a memoir, but really for me, it's a reminder. It's all the things that make me who I am, that make me like voraciously hungry, curious, never, always having the feeling, never being satisfied with like, we need more individuality. We need more people being themselves and showing up for themselves in the world. I do that through dessert, but like that could be, it could be wine could save the world. It could be
100%.
comedy could save the world. It could be any of those things, right? And for me, I'm just excited about sharing that with more people and watching them figure out what that, maybe it's dessert for them too. I don't know. And just figuring out how to do more of that, because it is acknowledging that like we will always be in a blissful balance or lack thereof balancing act of life. And we're all trying to figure out how to survive and how to make the most of it and how to thrive and how to learn as we go. And for me, I'm excited to show up every day. I'm a lifetime learner, and I'm just excited about what that book brought out of me, sharing it with more people and just doing more of the work on the clock and off the clock, right? Like even having written it and talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, there's an opportunity. I could help this person do this, X, Y, and Z, but I'm the most excited about those things.
Knowing that this audience that's listening has a lot of aspiring authors and currently people in their book deal, writing books. What was, you've done books before though, right?
Cookbooks mostly. This is the first non-cookbook
right
book written.
What did you learn in this process from a commercial standpoint? So not the writing process, but of how many you wanted to sell, whether it did more or less, or how, or what lists you wanted to make, or what the publisher did or didn't do, like real talk before we get out of here.
I love a good real talk.
I think real talk, because
I think that a publishing house knows a lot, right? And so it's important to use and leverage them as a partner, but it's important to remember, and by the way, this goes in leading your business and no one knows better than you do. And that's not to say you know everything. You have to come down to earth and say, I don't know everything. I need great partners that are experts in this field, but they don't know the heartbeat of these pages the way that you do. So they're going to market it the way that they know a book that looks a little bit like this, that's this size and this shape. They know how to make the wheel turn, but you know how to amplify it. You know who's going to read it, you know who you wrote it for, you know what it means, you know how it's going to deliver, and you have to challenge them. You have to challenge yourself to say, these people know how to sell books, but you have to challenge yourself to say, how can I make this better? Am I asking the right questions? How do I challenge this assumption or that assumption, whether it's volume or are you trying to make New York Times bestseller? How do you do that? They're going to give you the playbook that works for all their offers within this range, but you have to figure out how you make the marketing of it your very own.
To be even less politically correct, just for everybody who's listening, there's not a publisher on earth that knows how to sell one book. It's not what they do. What they do is they run a business, which is a great business, of finding talented people who are capable of running books, printing those books, getting those books to the stores. But let there be no confusion. The most obvious mistake that I see from all my friends and aspiring authors is that there's a proper assumption that your publisher is going to be a sales engine, and it is not true. It's just not. It's very clear to me. I've got a lot of them in the world. I've got a lot of friends with them, and that's not a razz to publishers. And it's not a razz it's just the way it actually is. And I think your point is really well taken.
Yeah. And if you want to be their number one author, it's because you do all of the legwork, right? Like otherwise they're going to treat you like all of their other authors, which is you're one of many authors and this is my job. And so I show up and I'm going to do this and I'm going to give you the same, book of tactics, but you are the person that has to go out and do the work and prove it out, because you're not going to get anyone's time or attention otherwise. But also great news, you're the one that wrote it. So you know the subject matter, you know why you think it should exist, you know what drove you to it, and you just have to go out and hustle, do the work.
Max.
As always.
That's a really good way to end this. I'm going to leave it at that. Christina, thank you so much for being on the show.
Great to see you, Gary. Bye. Take care.